Glass doors, raindrops still clinging to glass doors, raindrops still clinging to her charcoal hoodie. The storm outside had turned the October evening into a sheet of gray, but inside the terminal, under the soft glow of designer lighting, everything was supposed to be warm and welcoming. James Morrison didn't look up from his tablet when he delivered his verdict. He was 35, with hair so perfectly styled it looked painful, and a smile that never reached his eyes. Behind the marble reception desk, he embodied everything wrong with the private aviation industry, an industry Maya had spent 15 years trying to change. Maya shifted her backpack on her shoulder. It was a simple black pack, worn at the edges, containing nothing more threatening than a laptop and her phone. But to James, it might as well have been a neon sign reading "Doesn't belong here." "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice carrying that low, steady tone that had commanded boardrooms in Tokyo and London. "I'm a passenger." James finally looked up. His eyes performed their practiced sweep, cataloging every detail. Hoodie, jeans, combat boots still damp from the rain. His smirk was automatic, reflexive, the kind of expression that had been trained into him by years of dealing with what he considered the right kind of people. "Right," James said, with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "And I'm the Pope. Look, honey, this is Elite Airways. Tickets here start at 30 grand for a transatlantic hop. If you're looking for JetBlue, you're in the wrong state entirely." Maya reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone with deliberate calm. The screen displayed her boarding pass clearly. Phoenix Skyline 950, Flight E, A2847, Seat 1A, the penthouse suite. The name on the ticket read, Rodriguez M. "Name's Rodriguez," Maya said evenly. "Suite 1A, I believe that's the penthouse." James didn't even glance at the screen. He waved his hand dismissively, as if shooing away a particularly persistent fly. "I don't have time for whatever scam this is." Security. From an alcove, Maya hadn't noticed two men in dark suits materialized. They moved with the heavy confidence of people who were used to making problems disappear quickly and quietly. Maya felt the familiar heat rise in her chest, not anger exactly, but the cold, calculating burn of an engineer identifying a critical system failure. She was about to make a phone call that would end more than just James Morrison's evening. But before she could reach for her contacts, the automatic doors behind her hissed open, bringing with them a tornado of noise entitlement and expensive perfume. "Careful with the Hermes trunk, you absolute moron. That leather is worth more than your car." Charlotte Whitmore swept into the lobby like a natural disaster in designer clothing. She was blonde in the way that required significant financial investment, brittle in the way that suggested too many cosmetic procedures, and draped in a white mink coat that looked obscene in the October rain. Behind her trailed an entourage of assistants and porters, all struggling to keep up with her pace and her demands. Maya recognized her immediately. Charlotte Whitmore, heir to the Whitmore shipping fortune, failed reality TV star, and living embodiment of everything wrong with inherited wealth. The tabloids loved her for her outrageous behavior, but the aviation industry tolerated her because her family's money spoke louder than her character. James's entire demeanor shifted like a switch being flipped. The sneer melted into an oily, obsequious smile that made Maya's stomach turn. He practically vaulted over the desk, his hands smoothing down his already perfect hair. "Miss Whitmore James," gushed his voice dripping with manufactured charm. "What an absolute honor to have you flying with Elite Airways this evening." "Welcome, welcome." Charlotte pulled off her designer sunglasses despite the fact that it was evening and they were indoors. Her eyes swept the lobby with the calculating gaze of someone who is always looking for something to complain about, some service to find insufficient, some person to look down upon. Those eyes landed on Maya, and Charlotte's expression shifted from mild displeasure to outright disgust. "James," Charlotte said, her voice sharp enough to cut crystal, "why is there a vagrant in my lobby?" Is this some sort of charity event I wasn't informed about? The word vagrant hung in the air like a slap. Maya felt it land, felt the familiar sting of assumptions made based on nothing more than the color of her skin and the clothes on her back. But she'd felt this sting before. She'd built an empire despite it, and she wasn't about to let some washed-up socialite diminish her now. James turned back to Maya, his face hardening into a mask of pure disdain. I was just removing her, Miss Whitmore. My sincerest apologies that you had to witness this inconvenience. He gestured to the security guards who stepped forward with practiced efficiency. Escort her out. Now. One of the guards reached for Maya's arm. She stepped back smoothly, avoiding contact without seeming to flee. Don't touch me, Maya said. The command was soft, but it carried enough authority to make the guard hesitate. She held up her phone again, the boarding pass still glowing on the screen. Scan it. Ma'am, I really don't think the guard began. Scan it. Maya repeated, her voice dropping to a register that had once stopped a room full of hostile investors dead in their tracks. If it's invalid, I'll leave. If it's valid, and you touch me again, I'll have your badge, your pension, and probably your house. James, humiliated in front of his VIP guest, snatched the scanner from the desk like a weapon. He jabbed it toward Maya's phone, clearly hoping for the angry red beep of rejection that would vindicate his assumptions and restore his authority. Beep. Green light. Passenger, M. Rodriguez. Seat 1A. The penthouse suite. The scanner didn't lie, but prejudice rarely let facts interfere with its narrative. James stared at the screen, then at Maya's worn boots, then back at the screen. His face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally settled on stubborn denial. System error, he muttered loud enough for Charlotte to hear. Has to be. Probably a hack. Behind the reception desk, a young woman named Isabella Hernandez watched the scene unfold with growing horror. She was 28 with kind eyes and the sort of natural warmth that made her excellent at customer service. Is there a problem? Charlotte snapped. Is there a problem? Charlotte snapped, tapping a manicured nail against the marble counter. I specifically requested the penthouse suite. My assistant assured me I would have complete privacy. James paled. He looked at Charlotte, then at his screen, then back at the woman in the hoodie who was causing his carefully ordered world to collapse. The manifest showed the penthouse was booked by Rodriguez. Charlotte was in 2A, the first-class suite directly behind it. It was still a $40,000 seat, but Charlotte Whitmore had never accepted anything less than the absolute best. A minor glitch. Miss Whitmore James lied, his voice smooth, despite the panic he felt rising in his chest. This individual appears to have a forged pass, possibly some sort of system intrusion. But don't worry, we'll sort it out once you're on board. He turned to Maya, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. You got lucky with a computer glitch, lady. You can board, but once you're on that aircraft, the crew chief will sort you out properly. If you think you're sitting in the penthouse suite, you're living in a fantasy. Maya picked up her backpack with deliberate calm. She looked at James Morrison, memorizing his face, his name tag the exact shade of smugness in his expression. She thought about the 15-year journey that had brought her to this moment, standing in a terminal that served aircraft she had designed, being treated like an intruder in an industry she had helped revolutionize. We'll see about that, Maya said quietly. She walked toward the tarmac entrance, her boots making soft sounds on the polished floor. Through the rain-streaked windows, she could see the Phoenix Skyline 950 waiting on the tarmac like a sleeping giant. Its sleek lines and revolutionary wing design were her creation, her vision made manifest in carbon fiber and titanium. The irony wasn't lost on her. She wasn't just boarding a plane. She was stepping into a trap of her own making. But what James Morrison and Charlotte Whitmore didn't understand was that Maya Rodriguez hadn't just built the trap. She held the key to every lock, every system, every protocol on that aircraft. And in about an hour, they were going to learn exactly what that meant. As the terminal doors slid open and the sound of rain filled the air, Isabella Hernandez made a decision that would change the trajectory of her career. She pulled out her phone and began typing a message to Elite Airways' corporate office. She didn't know who M. Rodriguez was, but she knew what she had just witnessed was wrong on every level that mattered. Behind her, James was already escorting Charlotte toward the tarmac, his voice full of reassurance and promises. But Isabella could see the storm clouds gathering, and they had nothing to do with the weather outside. The Phoenix Skyline 950 sat on the tarmac like a monument to engineering excellence, its polished surface reflecting the amber lights of Westchester County Airport. Maya had personally overseen every aspect of its design, from the revolutionary noise-dampening technology that made it whisper quiet at cruising altitude to the advanced air filtration system that recycled cabin air every 90 seconds. She paused at the base of the aircraft stairs, one hand on the rail, feeling the slight vibration from the auxiliary power unit humming inside the belly of the machine. This was her creation, her vision of what private aviation could be when designed with both luxury and accessibility in mind. The rain had turned her hoodie several shades darker, but she didn't care about appearances anymore. She was about to step inside the most advanced private aircraft ever built, and she was going to experience it exactly as her customers did, from the perspective of someone who had been prejudged and found wanting. The irony was perfect. The tragedy was that it was necessary. Maya climbed the aircraft steps with measured precision, her hand trailing along the custom-machined handrail she had personally approved in the design phase. Each step was exactly 7.2 inches calculated for optimal comfort and safety. The cabin door threshold bore the Phoenix Aerospace logo etched in titanium and filled with aerospace-grade polymer that would last 50 years of regular use. She stepped into the aircraft's foyer, a space she had designed to create an immediate sense of arrival rather than transition. The lighting shifted automatically from cool white to warm amber as the cabin sensors detected her presence, responding to circadian rhythm algorithms she had helped develop. To her left, a narrow corridor led to the main passenger cabin. To her right, behind a frosted glass partition, lay the penthouse suite. Suite 1A, the crown jewel of the Phoenix Skyline 950. Maya turned right and slid open the partition door. The suite was exactly as she had envisioned it 3 years ago when she first sketched the concept on a napkin during a red-eye flight from Seattle to Boston. The space felt more like a boutique hotel room than an aircraft cabin. A king-sized bed dominated the far wall, dressed in Egyptian cotton linens that cost more than most people's monthly salary. To the left, a sitting area featured 2 leather chairs that could swivel to face either the bed or the windows, depending on whether the occupant wanted privacy or views. The ensuite bathroom was compact but luxurious, with a rainfall shower-heated floors and a window that could switch from transparent to opaque at the touch of a button. The walls were paneled in sustainable teak hand-selected from certified forests in Myanmar, and polished to a honey glow that seemed to emanate warmth. Maya dropped her backpack on one of the leather chairs and sat down on the bed. The mattress responded perfectly to her weight, conforming without being soft, supporting without being firm. She had tested 47 different foam combinations before approving this exact specification. She pulled out her tablet and began making notes. The cabin pressure felt optimal. The air circulation was whisper quiet but efficient. The temperature was exactly 72 degrees, just as specified. She was deep in evaluating the ambient noise levels when heavy footsteps approached from the main cabin. The frosted glass partition slid open with more force than necessary, and Maya looked up to see a tall man in the Elite Airways uniform standing in the doorway. This was Marcus Thompson, the senior purser, and everything about his posture screamed authority challenged. He was 38, with the kind of rigid bearing that suggested military background, and a face that looked like it had been carved from disapproval. His uniform was immaculate, the navy blue fabric with gold piping pressed to razor sharpness, his cap positioned with geometric precision. He stared at Maya for a long moment, his eyes cataloging every detail. Her boots, still damp from the rain, resting on the custom-woven carpet. Her hoodie, which had probably cost more than his monthly car payment, but looked like something from a college bookstore. Her calm expression, which suggested she belonged exactly where she was sitting. "What do you think you're doing?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying the kind of authority that was used to instant compliance. Maya didn't look up from her tablet. Checking the cabin humidity, she said conversationally, "It's sitting at 18%. Optimal for this altitude would be 20%. You might want to adjust the recirculation fans before we reach cruising altitude." Marcus stepped fully into the suite, his presence suddenly making the spacious room feel cramped. "I'm not talking about the air, madam. I'm talking about you. This is the penthouse suite. It costs $55,000 for a one-way ticket to London. You are trespassing." Maya finally looked up from her tablet, meeting his eyes with the kind of steady gaze that had stared down hostile corporate boards and government regulators. "I have a ticket," she said simply. "Seat 1A. Let me see it," Marcus said, extending his hand with the expectation of immediate compliance. Maya held out her phone. Marcus snatched it before she could offer it properly, his movements sharp with irritation. He looked at the digital boarding pass, his frown deepening as he read. "Rodriguez," he muttered. "Some sort of employee pass, I assume. Or maybe you used frequent flyer miles." He looked at her again, his expression making it clear what he thought of people who couldn't afford to pay full price for luxury accommodations. "There's been a mistake," Marcus continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something to a child. "We have a very important passenger boarding in 2 minutes. Miss Charlotte Whitmore specifically requested this suite, and frankly, she requires privacy and a certain standard of co-passenger." Maya took her phone back, her movements deliberately calm. "The seat is assigned to me," she said. "I paid for it. Full fare." "With whose credit card?" Marcus muttered under his breath, but not quietly enough. He straightened his jacket and took another step closer, using his height to try to intimidate her. "Look, I'm going to make this simple for everyone involved. You are going to move. We have a seat available in business class 4B. It's a perfectly comfortable lie-flat seat. You take that, or I have you removed by federal air marshals for disrupting a flight." Maya stood up slowly. At 5'8", she was nearly as tall as Marcus, and the shift in dynamics made him take an involuntary half-step backward. "You want to move a paying customer from the suite she booked to accommodate someone who wants an upgrade?" Maya asked, her voice carrying the kind of dangerous quiet that preceded corporate earthquakes. "I am the senior purser on this aircraft," Marcus said, his voice rising slightly as he felt control of the situation slipping away. "I have absolute authority over seating arrangements, and I'm telling you that you don't fit the profile of a penthouse passenger. Your presence here is degrading the brand experience for our legitimate VIP guests." Before Maya could respond, a high-pitched voice echoed from the main cabin, piercing through the aircraft's sound, dampening like nails on a chalkboard. "Marcus, Marcus. Darling, why is my suite occupied?" Charlotte Whitmore swept through the partition like a force of nature, having shed her wet mink coat to reveal a designer ensemble that probably cost more than most people's cars. She held a crystal flute of champagne that she definitely wasn't supposed to have during pre-flight preparations, but rules had never applied to Charlotte Whitmore. She looked at Maya with the expression one might reserve for finding a cockroach in a 5-star restaurant. "Oh," Charlotte said, taking a theatrical sip of champagne. "It's the delivery girl from the terminal. Marcus, why is she in my room?" "I'm handling the situation." "Miss Whitmore," Marcus said, his voice immediately shifting to the kind of obsequious tone that made Maya's skin crawl. "There seems to have been some sort of computer error with the seating assignments." Maya looked directly at Charlotte. "This is my seat, Miss Whitmore. You're assigned to 2A, which is a beautiful first-class suite just behind this partition." Charlotte laughed, a sound like expensive crystal being deliberately shattered. 2. A. "Do I look like someone who sits in 2A? I need this space. I need room for my yoga routine, my meditation practice, and frankly, I prefer not to share cabin air with—" She waved her hand vaguely in Maya's direction. "Whatever this is." The insult hung in the air like smoke from an engine fire. Maya didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't give Charlotte the satisfaction of a reaction. But she filed the comment away in the part of her mind that had been cataloging injustices for 15 years. "If you move me," Maya said to Marcus, her voice dropping to the kind of register that suggested consequences, "you will be violating Federal Aviation Administration regulations regarding confirmed passengers. You will also be violating Elite Airways' own contract of carriage." Marcus sneered, his confidence returning now that he had Charlotte's support. "I am the captain of this cabin, ma'am. I can move anyone for operational necessity, and your presence here is clearly disturbing the peace and comfort of our high-value clients. That constitutes an operational necessity." He reached out and grabbed the strap of Maya's backpack. "Gather your belongings. You're moving to 4B right now." Maya's hand shot out and clamped over Marcus's wrist. Her grip was firm enough to freeze his movement, but not tight enough to cause pain. Yet. "Remove your hand from my bag," she whispered, her voice carrying a promise of consequences that made Marcus's eyes widen slightly. "Think very carefully about your next move, Marcus, because once this aircraft leaves the ground, there's no going back from whatever happens next." Marcus yanked his hand away, rubbing his wrist and shooting a glance at Charlotte, who was watching the confrontation with the kind of fascination people reserved for watching car crashes on the highway. Fine Marcus spat his face flushing red with embarrassment and anger. "Stay there for now. But once we're airborne, I'm getting the captain involved, and when we land in London Airport, security will be waiting for you. I guarantee you're going to regret ever stepping foot on this aircraft." Maya sat back down on the bed and crossed her legs with deliberate composure. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I promise you're the one who's going to wish this conversation had never happened." Marcus hustled Charlotte out of the suite, his voice loud enough for Maya to hear as he promised free champagne, caviar, and whatever else it took to keep their VIP happy until he could take care of the situation once they were airborne. The partition slid closed, leaving Maya alone in the silence of the suite. She could hear muffled voices from the main cabin as other passengers boarded, but the sound insulation she had personally specified kept their conversations to a whisper. Maya pulled out her phone and opened an app that looked like any other airline loyalty program interface. But when she entered her credentials, the screen changed to something far more sophisticated. It was a direct link to Phoenix Aerospace's Flight Operations Center, a secure channel that could access any aircraft her company had ever built. She typed a message, Flight EA 2847. Initiate remote diagnostic protocol. Authorization, Phoenix Alpha 1. Stand by for instructions. She put the phone aside and looked out the window as ground crew prepared for departure. The rain was still falling, turning the tarmac into a mirror that reflected the aircraft's navigation lights. Maya wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was the system administrator on a network that Marcus Thompson and Charlotte Whitmore had no idea they were about to challenge. And that network was about to teach them the difference between authority and ownership. The Phoenix Skyline 950 pushed back from the gate with the smooth precision Maya had designed into every aspect of its ground operations. She felt the subtle shift as the aircraft's weight transferred from the landing gear to the pushback tractor, then the gentle momentum as they began moving away from the terminal. Through her window, she watched the ground crew's choreographed dance, each person performing their role with practiced efficiency. The irony wasn't lost on her. Everyone outside the aircraft was focused on safety precision and getting things right. Everyone inside seemed determined to get things as wrong as possible. The cabin intercom crackled to life with the captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez speaking." Maya smiled despite herself at the coincidence of the shared surname. "We've been cleared for takeoff and expect a smooth flight to London. Flight time today will be 7 hours and 35 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare for departure." Maya settled back into her seat, the leather conforming perfectly to her body. The seat itself had cost Phoenix Aerospace $240,000 to develop, with ergonomics calculated down to the degree of lumbar support and the optimal angle for both sleeping and working. She had personally tested 17 different prototypes before approving this final design. She was reviewing engine telemetry data on her tablet when the partition slid open again. This time it wasn't just Marcus. He stood there with Charlotte Whitmore behind him, and they were clearly approaching this as a coordinated assault. Charlotte had consumed more champagne during the brief taxi period, and her eyes had the glassy shine of someone who had moved past sophisticated drunk into mean drunk territory. She pointed at Maya with her champagne flute sloshing expensive Dom Perignon onto the carpet. "She's still here," Charlotte announced, as if Maya's presence was a personal affront to the laws of physics. "Marcus, you promised me this would be resolved before takeoff." Marcus stepped into the suite with the swagger of a man who believed he held all the power in this particular equation. Behind him, Maya could see a younger flight attendant, a nervous-looking woman who was clearly uncomfortable with whatever was about to happen. "Ma'am," Marcus said to Maya, his voice carrying the kind of forced patience that suggested his actual patience had run out sometime during the safety briefing. "I gave you the opportunity to move voluntarily. You chose not to take it. Now we're going to resolve this the hard way." Maya looked up from her tablet. "We're at cruising altitude, Marcus. The seatbelt sign is off. I'm sitting in my assigned seat, reading quietly, bothering no one." "What exactly is the problem?" "The problem," Charlotte interjected, swaying slightly as she spoke, "is that I can hear your typing. Click, click, click. It's incredibly disruptive. I'm trying to meditate, and your aggressive keyboard use is disturbing my chakras." Maya glanced at her tablet. It had a touch screen. It didn't make any sound at all. "Miss Whitmore," Maya said carefully, "this is a tablet. It doesn't have a keyboard. There's no clicking." "Don't argue with me," Charlotte snapped, taking another gulp of champagne. "I know what I hear. You people are always so defensive. The phrase, 'you people,' hung in the air like toxic gas." Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced in a dozen boardrooms when someone had questioned her qualifications based on assumptions rather than evidence. Marcus pulled a pair of plastic zip-tie restraints from his pocket, the kind typically reserved for violent passengers or air rage incidents. "I'm done negotiating," he announced. "You are being moved for the safety and comfort of other passengers. Stand up." Maya looked at the restraints, then back at Marcus's face. "You're threatening to handcuff a compliant passenger because someone complained about typing that isn't happening." "I am restraining a disruptive individual who has refused crew instructions and continues to cause distress to our premium passengers," Marcus recited, clearly enjoying the authority his position gave him. "We are relocating you to a jump seat in the rear galley where you can be properly monitored." The young flight attendant behind him, Sophia Martinez, took a small step forward. She was 24, idealistic and new enough to the job that she still believed in doing the right thing even when it was uncomfortable. "Marcus," Sophia said quietly, "maybe we should check with the captain first. She hasn't actually done anything disruptive." Marcus turned on her with the kind of fury that supervisors reserve for subordinates who dare to question their judgment. "Sophia, you are new here, so let me explain how this works. I am the senior purser. I make decisions about cabin management. Your job is to follow orders, not question them." Sophia fell silent, but Maya could see the internal conflict playing out on her young face. This was clearly not the kind of aviation career Sophia had dreamed about when she first put on the uniform. Charlotte was becoming more agitated, her voice rising to a pitch that could probably be heard throughout the cabin. "I don't feel safe," she declared, gesturing wildly with her champagne flute. "She has a backpack. Who knows what's in there? Drugs, weapons, bombs, maybe. This is post-9/11 America, people. We can't be too careful." The accusation hit the cabin like lightning. Maya felt the word bomb settle around her like a straitjacket, transforming her from passenger to suspect in the span of a single sentence. She had heard this playbook before. When subtle racism didn't work, escalate to fear. When fear didn't work, invoke terrorism. Miss Whitmore Maya said, her voice deadly calm. "You just accused me of being a terrorist because I'm black and wearing a hoodie. Do you understand the legal implications of what you just said?" "Oh, please," Charlotte scoffed, seemingly oblivious to the line she had just crossed. "Stop playing the race card. This has nothing to do with color. It has to do with class. Look at your clothes. Look at your shoes. You clearly don't belong in this cabin." Marcus stepped forward, energized by Charlotte's support and apparently unconcerned about the potential legal ramifications of what was happening. "That's enough," he said, reaching for Maya's arm. "You're coming with me, now." Maya stood up smoothly, moving with a fluid grace that made Marcus flinch involuntarily. She was faster than he expected, more controlled, and something in her movement suggested that laying hands on her might not go as simply as he assumed. But Maya didn't resist physically. She understood that any physical resistance would give them the legal justification they desperately wanted to arrest her, potentially even divert the flight. Instead, she let Marcus grab her wrist, let him pull her out of the suite past a triumphant Charlotte Whitmore. Finally, Charlotte called out as they passed. "Sophia, spray some air freshener in here when you get a chance. It smells like poverty." Maya was marched through the narrow corridor that separated the penthouse suite from the main passenger cabin. She could see the faces of other passengers through the gaps in their privacy partitions. Mostly older white men in expensive suits who looked up from their laptops and newspapers with expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. One passenger, a tech entrepreneur named David Park, had his phone out and was clearly recording the procession. His face showed the kind of fascination people get when they witness something they know is wrong but can't look away from. "Are you getting this?" he whispered to the woman sitting across from him, a travel blogger named Jennifer Walsh, who was live streaming her flight experience for her YouTube channel. Jennifer nodded, adjusting her phone's angle to capture the scene without being obvious about it. "This is Jennifer from Wanderlust Weekly," she said quietly into her phone, "and I'm witnessing something absolutely insane on this flight right now." Marcus pushed Maya past the business class cabin toward the rear of the aircraft, past the economy section where other passengers were settling in for the long flight to London. The farther back they went, the smaller the aircraft felt the walls seeming to close in as they approached the galley area. "Sit," Marcus barked, shoving Maya onto a hard plastic jump seat next to the rear lavatory. The smell of chemical disinfectant was sharp here, mixed with the less pleasant odors of an aircraft bathroom. The jump seat was designed for crew rest, not passenger comfort, and Maya could feel the difference immediately. Marcus loomed over her, his face flushed with what he clearly thought was victory. "You stay here. You don't talk to other passengers. You don't ask for food or water. You sit and you think about how your attitude got you into this situation." He turned to Sophia, who had followed them to the rear galley looking increasingly distressed. "Sophia, I want you to watch her. If she moves, if she tries to talk to anyone, you call me immediately on the interphone." "Yes, Marcus," Sophia whispered, looking at Maya with apologetic eyes. Marcus straightened his uniform jacket and shot Maya one last look of smug satisfaction. "When we land in London Airport, security will be waiting. I've already sent word ahead. They'll want to search your bag, question you about your behavior, probably put you on a no-fly list. Congratulations, You've just made your last flight on a premium airline." He marched back toward the front of the aircraft, leaving Maya alone with Sophia, who was pretending to organize napkins while stealing glances at the woman she was supposed to be guarding. Maya sat on the uncomfortable jump seat, feeling the vibration of the aircraft's engines through the thin wall behind her. She was in the most sophisticated aircraft ever designed, a machine that represented 15 years of her life's work being treated like a criminal by people whose salaries her company's innovations had helped make possible. The irony was suffocating. She had designed the very latch on the lavatory door next to her. She had specified the thread count of the carpet beneath her feet. She held patents on 17 different components of the aircraft's avionics system, and here she sat in the back of her own creation being punished for the crime of existing while black in first class. She looked at Sophia, who was still avoiding eye contact. "Sophia," Maya said gently. Sophia jumped, nearly dropping her stack of napkins. I can't talk to you," Marcus said. "I know what Marcus said." Maya interrupted, her voice kind but firm. "But I need you to do something important. It's about flight safety." Sophia's training kicked in. Flight safety took precedence over everything else in the aviation world. "Safety?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My laptop," Maya said, nodding toward the front of the aircraft. "Marcus left it in the penthouse suite when he dragged me back here. It has lithium-ion batteries that need to be properly shut down at altitude. If it overheats, it could pose a fire risk." It was a calculated lie, but not entirely untrue. Improperly managed lithium batteries could indeed pose risks, and Sophia's training would have covered the protocols for dealing with potential Class A fires in the cabin. Sophia bit her lip, looking toward the front of the aircraft where Marcus had disappeared. "A fire risk, Class A fire protocols?" Maya said, using the technical language Sophia would recognize. "You know what happens if we have a battery fire at cruising altitude with no emergency landing options?" Sophia's face went pale. She had indeed been trained on fire suppression, and the idea of dealing with a thermal runaway battery event over the Atlantic Ocean was the stuff of aviation nightmares. I could go get it," Sophia said, her voice barely audible. "I could say I'm clearing the suite for turn-down service." "Thank you," Maya said. "You're doing the right thing." Sophia hurried away toward the front of the aircraft, leaving Maya alone in the rear galley. Through the small porthole in the emergency exit door, she could see nothing but darkness and the occasional flash of the aircraft's navigation lights against the clouds. She wasn't just going to get her laptop back. She was going to use it to tear down Marcus Thompson's world one command line at a time. But first, she needed to access the aircraft's hidden networks, the ones that only Phoenix Aerospace engineers were supposed to know about. 5 minutes later, Sophia returned, clutching the laptop against her chest like it was an unexploded bomb. "He didn't see me," she whispered, handing the computer to Maya. She was throwing ice cubes at the window. "She's really drunk." "Thank you, Sophia," Maya said, taking the laptop. "You may have just saved everyone on this aircraft from a very dangerous situation." Sophia nodded and retreated to her station, satisfied that she had done her duty to flight safety. She had no idea that she had just handed Maya Rodriguez the keys to the entire aircraft. Maya opened the laptop on her knees, the screen casting a blue glow in the dimly lit galley. She connected to the aircraft's internal network, not the passenger Wi-Fi that other travelers used, but the maintenance and diagnostic network that monitored every system on the aircraft. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision. Login Phoenix_root. Password biometric scan accepted. The screen filled with data streams she knew better than her own heartbeat. Engine performance optimal. Hydraulic pressure within normal parameters. Cabin environmental systems functioning perfectly. Communications array fully operational. Maya smiled for the first time since boarding the aircraft. She pulled up the passenger manifest, the crew roster, and the flight plan. But more importantly, she accessed the aircraft's external communication systems. She initiated a secure video link to Phoenix Aerospace's operations center in Seattle. The connection took a moment to establish, but when it did, the face that appeared on her screen belonged to Elena Santos, the chief legal officer of Phoenix Aerospace and one of Maya's closest friends. Maya Elena said, her voice tinny through the laptop speakers. "We weren't expecting a check-in. How's the flight test going?" Elena's expression changed when she saw the background behind Maya, the institutional beige walls of the rear galley, instead of the luxurious penthouse suite Elena knew Maya should be occupying. Maya said, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "I need you to get Robert Harrison on the phone. Wake him up if you have to. Tell him we have a critical situation on flight EA2847. "What kind of situation?" Elena asked, but she was already reaching for her secure phone. "The kind that's about to end several careers and possibly our relationship with Elite Airways," Maya said. "I've been racially profiled, physically removed from the suite I paid for, and am currently being detained in the rear galley by crew members who don't know they're about to face the full weight of Phoenix Aerospace's legal department." Elena's face went white. "They did what Get Harrison," Maya said. "Tell him I want a conference call patched through to the aircraft's PA system in exactly 10 minutes. Every passenger, every crew member, everyone on this aircraft is going to hear what happens when you mistake the owner for the help." Elena was already dialing, her fingers flying over the phone's keypad. "Consider it done. Maya, are you okay? Do you need us to—" "I'm fine," Maya interrupted. "But Marcus Thompson and Charlotte Whitmore are about to learn a very expensive lesson about assumptions." She closed the laptop and leaned back against the galley wall, listening to the steady hum of the engines she had helped design. In 10 minutes, the entire dynamic of flight EA2847 was going to change forever. In the penthouse suite, Charlotte was sprawled across the bed, an empty champagne bottle rolling around on the floor beside her. Marcus was in the main galley, laughing with other crew members about how he had handled the situation with their difficult passenger. Neither of them had any idea that the storm was about to break directly over their heads, and it was going to be Category 5. The satellite phone in Robert Harrison's bedroom rang at 2:17 a.m. Pacific Time. As the CEO of Elite Airways, Harrison was used to middle-of-the-night emergencies. Aircraft had mechanical problems. Weather grounded flights. Occasionally, celebrities had meltdowns that required corporate intervention, but when he answered the phone and heard Elena Santos's voice, he knew this was different. Elena Santos didn't call about routine problems. Elena Santos was the chief legal officer of Phoenix Aerospace, one of the most powerful women in the aviation industry, and when she called at 2 a.m., fortunes were about to change hands. Robert Elena said without preamble, "We have a problem with flight EA2847. Harrison sat up in bed, instantly alert. What kind of problem? Mechanical weather? Human error. Elena said, her voice carrying the kind of precision that preceded legal earthquakes. Your crew has racially profiled, physically assaulted, and illegally detained the CEO of Phoenix Aerospace. Dr. Maya Rodriguez is currently being held in the rear galley of her own aircraft by a purser named Marcus Thompson and a passenger named Charlotte Whitmore. The words hit Harrison like a freight train. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't process what he was hearing. Maya Rodriguez. The Maya Rodriguez. The woman who had revolutionized private aviation. The CEO of the company that built the aircraft Elite Airways, leased for their most profitable routes. That can't be right, Harrison stammered, reaching for his laptop. Maya Rodriguez flies private. She has her own fleet. Why would she be on a commercial flight? She was testing the customer experience incognito, Elena said. She paid full price for the penthouse suite to evaluate her aircraft's performance from a passenger perspective. Instead, she's been treated like a criminal because your crew saw a black woman in casual clothes and decided she didn't belong in first class. Harrison's laptop screen flickered to life, showing him the passenger manifest for flight EA2847. There it was clear as day. Rodriguez M., Seat 1A, the penthouse suite. $55,000 paid in full. Jesus Christ, Harrison whispered. It gets worse, Elena continued. Your purser physically removed her from her seat, placed her in restraints, and moved her to the rear galley. She's been accused of terrorism by a passenger named Charlotte Whitmore, who is currently occupying Dr. Rodriguez's suite while intoxicated. Harrison was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with one hand, while holding the phone with the other. What do you need me to do? Dr. Rodriguez wants a conference call patched through to the aircraft's PA system, Elena said. She wants every passenger and crew member to hear what happens next. You have 5 minutes to make that call, Robert. After that, this becomes a federal case with international implications. I'm calling the plane now, Harrison said, his hands shaking as he dialed the aircraft's satellite communication system. Elena, please tell Dr. Rodriguez that Elite Airways will do everything possible to make this right. That's going to depend on what everything means, Robert Elena said. Because right now your company is in violation of federal anti-discrimination laws, international passenger rights treaties, and basic human decency. The connection clicked through to Flight EA2847. Captain Rodriguez answered on the first ring. Captain, this is Robert Harrison, CEO of Elite Airways. I need you to patch me through to the cabin PA system immediately. This is a Priority 1 emergency. Sir, Captain Rodriguez sounded confused. We haven't declared any emergency. All systems are normal. Patch me through, Captain. Right now. Every passenger and crew member needs to hear what I'm about to say. In the rear galley, Maya was watching the seconds tick by on her laptop screen. She had given Harrison exactly 10 minutes to make the call. If he failed to meet that deadline, she was going to initiate protocols that would end Elite Airways' access to Phoenix Aerospace technology permanently. Sofia Martinez was still nervously organizing supplies nearby, stealing glances at Maya and clearly sensing that something significant was about to happen. Other passengers were settling in for the long flight, adjusting their seats, ordering drinks, watching movies on their personal screens. In the penthouse suite, Charlotte Whitmore was sprawled across the bed trying to take selfies with the bottle of champagne she had somehow convinced Marcus to give her. The alcohol had made her even more entitled than usual, if such a thing was possible. Marcus Thompson was in the main galley regaling the other flight attendants with his version of events. You should have seen her face when I put her in the back, he was saying. These people think they can just buy their way into first class and we'll all bow down. Well, not on my aircraft. The cabin music, a soft jazz playlist that Maya had personally selected for optimal passenger relaxation, suddenly cut out. The silence that followed was absolute heavy with the kind of anticipation that precedes thunderstorms. Then Robert Harrison's voice boomed through the overhead speakers, transmitted via satellite from his office in Beverly Hills to 38,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. Attention crew and passengers of Flight EA2847. This is Robert Harrison, Chief Executive Officer of Elite Airways. Marcus Thompson froze a coffee cup halfway to his lips. Every flight attendant in the cabin stopped what they were doing. Passengers looked up from their screens and books. Charlotte Whitmore nearly dropped her champagne bottle. I am speaking to you directly from our corporate headquarters because I have just received information that threatens the immediate future of this airline and requires my personal intervention. Harrison's voice carried across the cabin with crystal clarity, the satellite connection eliminating any static or delay. Every word landed with the weight of corporate authority and barely contained panic. There is a passenger on this flight who has been subjected to treatment that violates every standard of service, legality, and basic human dignity that Elite Airways claims to represent. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, seated currently in the rear galley, is not merely a passenger. The name hung in the cabin air like a revelation. In the rear galley, Maya remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Sofia Martinez gasped, her hand flying to cover her mouth. Dr. Rodriguez is the founder and chief executive officer of Phoenix Aerospace. She designed the aircraft you are sitting in. She built this plane. She owns the company that manufactures it and leases it to Elite Airways. In the penthouse suite, Charlotte Whitmore's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the teak floor. In the main galley, Marcus Thompson's coffee cup followed suit, hot liquid splashing across his pristine uniform. For those of you recording this incident, Harrison continued, his voice now shaking with barely controlled rage, and I know several of you are. Dr. Rodriguez was denied her rightful seat in the penthouse suite, physically assaulted by crew members accused of terrorism, and forcibly relocated to the rear galley because she is a black woman wearing casual clothing. David Park's phone was indeed recording, capturing not just Harrison's words, but the shocked faces of passengers around him. Jennifer Walsh was live streaming the entire event, her viewer count climbing rapidly as word spread across social media that something extraordinary was happening on Flight E, A2847. Marcus Thompson. Harrison's voice called out, and Marcus flinched as if he had been struck. You are the senior purser on this flight, and you have committed acts that will end your career in aviation permanently. You have 60 seconds to escort Dr. Rodriguez back to her rightful suite, offer her your unconditional apology, and then surrender your authority to the captain for the remainder of this flight. Marcus stood frozen in the galley, his face cycling through disbelief, terror, and the slowly dawning realization that his life had just been destroyed by his own prejudices. Charlotte Whitmore Harrison continued, and Charlotte's name echoed through the cabin like an indictment. You are currently trespassing in Dr. Rodriguez's suite. You will vacate that space immediately. Legal counsel will be waiting for you upon landing to discuss your accusations of terrorism and the damage you have caused to Elite Airways' reputation. Charlotte stumbled to her feet, champagne and shock making her movements unsteady. She looked around the suite, as if seeing it for the first time, suddenly understanding that every luxury surrounding her belonged to the woman she had called a vagrant. Dr. Rodriguez Harrison said, his voice softening slightly but still carrying across the cabin with corporate authority. On behalf of Elite Airways, our crew, and every employee of this company, I offer you our most profound apologies. What has happened to you is inexcusable, and we will spend however long it takes to make this right. The connection held for a moment longer, filled with the kind of silence that follows earthquakes. Then Harrison's voice returned for a final statement. Yes, she said simply. I did, and now I need to go inspect my work. The walk from the rear galley to the penthouse suite was the longest 40 feet in aviation history. As Maya moved through the cabin, passengers didn't just look up. They stood. Some touched their hearts. Others whispered words of apology or support. David Park held his phone high, documenting her procession back to dignity. Marcus Thompson appeared in the main galley doorway, his face pale and his uniform disheveled. When he saw Maya approaching, he opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? What apology could undo what he had done? Marcus, Maya said quietly as she passed him. You're relieved of duty. Please report to the captain. She continued toward the penthouse suite where Charlotte Whitmore was hastily gathering her belongings, tears streaming down her face. Charlotte looked up as Maya appeared in the doorway, and for a moment, the two women simply stared at each other. I didn't know, Charlotte whispered. You didn't want to know, Maya replied. There's a difference. Charlotte stumbled past her toward seat 2, the first-class accommodation that should have been sufficient for any reasonable person but had never been enough for someone who believed the world owed her everything. Maya entered her suite and looked around at the space Charlotte had occupied. The champagne bottle lay in pieces on the floor. Ice cubes were scattered across the custom carpet. The Egyptian cotton bedding was rumpled and stained, but it was still her creation. Every curve of the walls, every grain of the wood paneling, every fiber of the carpet had been chosen by her. She was home, even if it had taken a civil rights incident to get here. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with embarrassment and determination. "Doctor Rodriguez," she said, "I can clean this. I can replace the bedding vacuum, the carpet, bring you whatever you need." Maya looked at the young flight attendant, seeing in her face the kind of person she had hoped would work in the aviation industry when she first started designing aircraft for human beings, instead of just for profit margins. "Thank you, Sophia," Maya said. "But first, I need you to do something else for me." She pulled out her laptop and opened it to reveal screens full of diagnostic data that Sophia couldn't understand but somehow knew were important. "I need you to ask Captain Rodriguez to come back here," Maya said. "Tell him the aircraft designer wants to discuss some performance parameters with him." Sophia nodded and hurried away. Maya sat down in her leather chair, not where Charlotte had been, but in the spot she had originally chosen hours earlier. She opened her laptop fully and began typing commands that would reshape not just this flight, but the entire relationship between Phoenix Aerospace and the airlines that used their technology. Outside the windows, the Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions. But inside the aircraft, everything had changed. The hierarchy that had seemed so fixed, so permanent, had been revealed as nothing more than assumption and prejudice. And Maya Rodriguez, the woman they had tried to erase, was about to use her platform to ensure that no one else would ever experience what she had endured at 38,000 feet. The descent into London Heathrow was the smoothest Maya had ever experienced on one of her aircraft. Every hydraulic response was precise, every adjustment perfectly calibrated. The Phoenix Skyline 950 handled the approach like the engineering masterpiece. It was cutting through British fog with the kind of grace that only came from years of careful design and testing. But Maya wasn't focused on the aircraft's performance. She was watching the drama unfold in the cabin around her as the reality of what had happened began to sink in for everyone involved. Marcus Thompson had spent the remainder of the flight in the crew rest area, effectively under house arrest. Captain Rodriguez had relieved him of all duties after the CEO's call, and Marcus had retreated to the small crew quarters where he sat staring at the wall, occasionally pulling out his phone to delete social media accounts as notifications flooded in. Someone on the flight had posted video of his humiliation, and it was already going viral. Marcus Thompson Racist was trending on Twitter. His LinkedIn profile was being flooded with comments. His wife had left 17 voicemails that he couldn't bring himself to answer. Charlotte Whitmore had fared even worse. She had spent most of the flight alternating between furious phone calls to her lawyer and panicked attempts to control the narrative on social media. But the damage was done. Video of her calling Maya a vagrant and accusing her of terrorism was spreading across every platform. The Whitmore family's shipping business was already facing boycott threats. Hotels were canceling her reservations. The charity board she served on had issued a statement distancing themselves from her comments. Her reality TV comeback that she had been negotiating was officially dead. In the penthouse suite, Maya had spent the flight working. Not on Phoenix Aerospace business, but on something bigger. She was drafting a comprehensive plan for industry reform that would prevent what had happened to her from happening to anyone else. Sophia Martinez had been transformed by the evening's events. No longer the nervous junior flight attendant, she had taken charge of passenger service for the remainder of the flight, coordinating with other crew members and ensuring that Maya had everything she needed. Dr. Rodriguez Sophia said, appearing at the suite entrance with a steaming cup of tea. "We'll be landing in 15 minutes. I wanted to thank you." Maya looked up from her laptop. "Thank me for what?" "For handling this with dignity," Sophia said. "I've never seen anything like what Marcus and Charlotte did to you, but I've also never seen anyone respond the way you did. You didn't scream, you didn't threaten, you didn't lose control, you just fixed it." Maya smiled, the first genuine smile she had managed since boarding the aircraft. "Sophia, can I give you some advice?" "Yes, please." "The aviation industry needs people like you. People who care more about doing the right thing than following orders. Don't let what you witnessed tonight make you cynical about this business. Let it make you determined to change it. Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes. I will. I promise. As the aircraft touched down on runway 09L at Heathrow, Maya could see through her window that this wasn't going to be a normal arrival. The tarmac was crowded with vehicles. News vans lined the perimeter road. Camera crews were setting up positions near the private terminal. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London, Captain Rodriguez announced over the intercom. Local time is 6:45 a.m. Please remain seated until we reach our parking position. But Maya could see that some passengers were already standing phones out, recording everything. David Park was live streaming the landing to his 200,000 followers. Jennifer Walsh was providing live commentary to her YouTube audience, which had grown to 500,000 viewers during the flight. The aircraft came to a stop at Gate 12 of the private terminal. Outside, Maya could see two distinct groups waiting in the drizzle. On one side, a team from Phoenix Aerospace's London office held umbrellas and a secure tablet for her use. On the other side, men in suits with Elite Airways lanyards stood flanked by airport security and what appeared to be legal representatives. As the engines wound down and the cabin door opened, Maya gathered her belongings. She pulled her hood up, not to hide this time, but because she was ready to face the storm that waited outside. Marcus was the first to emerge from the crew area, escorted by a flight attendant who clearly wanted to be anywhere else. As he reached the bottom of the aircraft stairs, one of the Elite Airways executives stepped forward. Marcus Thompson. The man said, his voice carrying across the tarmac. I'm David Kellerman, Vice President of Human Resources for Elite Airways. You are terminated effective immediately. The words were delivered without ceremony, without sympathy. Marcus had become a liability that the company needed to distance itself from as quickly and publicly as possible. Your security clearances are revoked. Kellerman continued, handing Marcus an envelope. Your benefits are suspended pending investigation. You are banned from all Elite Airways facilities and aircraft. Airport security will escort you to the terminal where you can arrange your own transportation home. Marcus took the envelope with shaking hands. Mr. Kellerman, please, if I could just explain. There's nothing to explain, Kellerman interrupted. Your actions tonight have put this company at risk of federal investigation, civil rights lawsuits, and the potential loss of our relationship with Phoenix Aerospace. You are fortunate we're not pursuing criminal charges. Marcus was led away by security, his aviation career over at the age of 38. The uniform he had worn with such pride now looked like a costume from a play that had ended badly. Charlotte Whitmore emerged next, supported by a flight attendant because the combination of alcohol and stress had made her unsteady on her feet. Waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs was a stern-looking woman in a tailored suit. Miss Whitmore, the woman said, stepping into Charlotte's path. I'm Rebecca Martinez, representing Dr. Rodriguez's legal interests. You are being served with a cease and desist order regarding any further public statements about tonight's events. Charlotte tried to push past her, but the lawyer blocked her way. You are also being served with a civil lawsuit for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and making false accusations of terrorism. Do you know who I am? Charlotte slurred the last of her champagne, still affecting her speech. Yes, the lawyer replied. You're the defendant. The papers include a restraining order preventing you from traveling on any Phoenix Aerospace manufactured aircraft operated by our partner airlines. Charlotte's face went pale as she realized what that meant. Phoenix Aerospace built aircraft for virtually every major carrier in the world. The restraining order would effectively ban her from premium air travel for years. You can't do this, Charlotte whispered. We can. And we have, the lawyer said, pressing the legal documents into Charlotte's hands. Your family's legal team has already been notified. I suggest you contact them immediately. Charlotte was helped away by airport staff. Her white designer outfit now wrinkled and stained her reputation in ruins. Her access to the lifestyle she had always taken for granted suddenly and permanently revoked. Finally, Maya descended the stairs. She moved with calm purpose, ignoring the cameras that tracked her every step, the reporters shouting questions, the chaos that her revelation had created. At the bottom of the stairs, Sofia Martinez was waiting. She had changed out of her uniform and into civilian clothes, carrying a small overnight bag. "Dr. Rodriguez Sofia said I wanted to say goodbye. And to thank you again." Maya stopped, genuinely surprised. "Where are you going, Sofia?" "I quit," Sofia said simply. "After tonight, I can't work for Elite Airways anymore. I've seen what their culture really is, and I can't be part of it." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. It was black metal with silver etching, the kind of card that suggested serious corporate power. "Sofia Phoenix Aerospace is launching a new customer experience division next month. We're looking for flight attendants who understand that service means treating every passenger with dignity." Sofia took the card, staring at it as if it might disappear. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you the chance to help build something better," Maya said. "The pay is double what Elite Airways was giving you, and you'll never have to watch someone get treated the way I was treated tonight." Sofia hugged her, then a spontaneous embrace that spoke to the bond formed by shared experience of injustice and its resolution. "Thank you," Sofia whispered. "Thank you for showing me what courage looks like." Maya continued toward her waiting team. Elena Santos was there, tablet in hand, along with several Phoenix Aerospace executives who had flown in from various European offices. Maya Elena said, embracing her friend, "On her tablet. We have video evidence of on her tablet. We have video evidence of discrimination assault, false imprisonment, and defamation. The FAA is already opening an investigation. The Department of Transportation wants a full report by Monday." "And our contracts with Elite Airways terminated as of an hour ago," Elena said. "Robert Harrison tried to call 6 times to negotiate, but our position is firm. Phoenix Aerospace will not do business with companies that tolerate racial discrimination." Maya nodded, looking back at the aircraft she had designed. How many other airlines are interested in picking up Elite's routes? "All of them," Elena said with a slight smile. Apparently, treating passengers with dignity is suddenly very good for business. As they walked toward the waiting cars, Maya pulled out her phone and began typing a message that would be sent to every major news outlet, aviation industry publication, and social media platform. The message was simple. "What happened to me tonight was wrong, but it's not unique. Every day, passengers are discriminated against because of their race, their appearance, or their economic status. This has to stop. Phoenix Aerospace is committed to working with airline partners who share our values of dignity, equality, and respect for every human being." By the time Maya reached her hotel, the statement had been retweeted 50,000 times. Phoenix justice was trending globally. Stock analysts were already predicting which airlines would benefit from Elite Airways' sudden pariah status in the industry. But Maya wasn't thinking about stock prices or corporate partnerships. She was thinking about Sofia Martinez and Isabella Hernandez and every other person in the aviation industry who had the courage to stand up when they saw something wrong. Change wasn't just coming to the aviation industry. It had already arrived, traveling at 500 miles per hour in the belly of a Phoenix Skyline 950. 6 months after Flight EA-2847, the aviation industry looked fundamentally different. Maya Rodriguez hadn't just reclaimed her seat. She had used her platform to rebuild the entire system of how airlines treated passengers. The Phoenix Equality Protocol, launched 3 weeks after the London incident, had become the gold standard for passenger rights across the industry. The comprehensive program included real-time bias monitoring systems, mandatory unconscious bias training for all aviation staff, and anonymous reporting mechanisms for passengers who experienced discrimination. Maya's Seattle office had been transformed into a command center for aviation reform. Wall-mounted screens displayed real-time data from participating airlines, tracking everything from passenger complaint patterns to crew performance metrics. The data was sobering, revealing that what had happened to Maya was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of discrimination that had been largely invisible until now. "The numbers are staggering," Elena Santos said during their weekly review meeting, gesturing toward a display showing complaint data from the past 6 months. "We've documented over 3,000 incidents of passenger profiling based on race, ethnicity, religion, or perceived economic status." Maya studied the data, seeing patterns that confirmed what she had long suspected. "What's the response rate from airlines? 94% of major carriers have adopted the Phoenix Protocol voluntarily," Elena replied. "The others are facing federal mandates. The Department of Transportation made it clear that non-compliance isn't an option. The transformation hadn't been just regulatory. Consumer behavior had shifted dramatically after the viral videos from Flight EA2847. Passengers were actively choosing airlines based on their diversity and inclusion records. Social media campaigns like Fly with Dignity had given travelers a platform to share their experiences, both positive and negative. Elite Airways had become a cautionary tale. The company's stock price had plummeted 60% in the weeks following the incident. Robert Harrison had been forced to resign as CEO. The airline was now operating under federal oversight, implementing reforms that would take years to complete. Marcus Thompson's fall had been swift and complete. Videos of his behavior had been viewed over 50 million times across various platforms. He had been blacklisted from the aviation industry and was last known to be working at a car rental desk in Phoenix, a job he obtained by omitting his aviation experience from his resume. Charlotte Whitmore's consequences had been even more severe. The civil lawsuit filed by Maya's legal team had resulted in a multi-million-dollar settlement, but that was the least of Charlotte's problems. Her family's shipping business had lost major contracts due to the reputational damage. She had been quietly disinherited by her parents and was now living in a studio apartment in Queens, her trust fund frozen, pending the outcome of federal tax investigations. But Maya's focus wasn't on punishment. It was on prevention and opportunity. The Phoenix Aerospace Training Institute had become the premier destination for aviation professionals seeking to understand best practices in passenger service. Sophia Martinez had become one of their most effective instructors, sharing her firsthand experience of witnessing discrimination and finding the courage to do the right thing. Today's class includes flight attendants from 12 different airlines, Sophia reported during the morning briefing. "We're seeing a real hunger for change among frontline staff. They want to be part of the solution." Isabella Hernandez had also found new purpose. After testifying about her experience at Westchester County Airport, she had been recruited by the Federal Aviation Administration to lead their new Passenger Rights Enforcement Division. Her inside knowledge of how discrimination operated in aviation made her uniquely qualified to identify and prevent future incidents. The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation. Maya's story had inspired similar accountability measures in hotels, restaurants, and retail establishments. The Rodriguez Standard had become shorthand for treating every customer with dignity, regardless of their appearance or perceived economic status. David Park, the tech entrepreneur who had filmed Marcus's behavior, had parlayed his viral videos into a successful consulting business helping companies develop bias prevention protocols. His footage had become training material used in business schools and corporate diversity programs. Jennifer Walsh, the travel blogger who had live-streamed the incident, had pivoted her channel to focus on documenting positive changes in travel industry. Her Dignity in Travel series had become one of YouTube's most popular travel-related programs, showcasing airlines and hotels that had embraced inclusive customer service. The legal implications had been far-reaching. The federal investigation into Flight EA2847 had uncovered evidence of broader discriminatory practices across the aviation industry. Class action lawsuits had been filed on behalf of hundreds of passengers who had experienced similar treatment over the years. Maya had used her position to ensure that the settlements from these lawsuits funded scholarships for underrepresented students pursuing careers in aviation, aerospace engineering, and related fields. The Maya Rodriguez Foundation had already awarded grants to over 500 students. "We're not just changing policies," Maya explained during a keynote speech at the International Aviation Summit in Geneva. "We're changing who has access to this industry. We're ensuring that the next generation of aviation professionals looks like the passengers they serve." The speech, delivered 6 months to the day after Flight EA-2847 was being broadcast live to aviation professionals worldwide. Maya stood at the podium wearing the same hoodie she had worn that night, now cleaned and pressed, but unchanged in its simplicity. "6 months ago, I was humiliated and detained on my own aircraft, because 2 people saw my skin color and my clothes and decided I didn't belong in first class. Tonight, I stand before you as proof that dignity cannot be stolen, only temporarily borrowed by those who mistake authority for wisdom." The audience, composed of airline CEOs, government regulators, and aviation professionals from around the world, gave her a standing ovation that lasted 4 minutes. "The changes we've implemented are not temporary fixes," Maya continued. "They are permanent shifts in how this industry operates. We have built monitoring systems that will detect discrimination in real time. We have trained staff who understand that bias is not just wrong, it's unprofitable. We have created reporting mechanisms that give every passenger a voice." Behind her, a large screen displayed statistics from the past 6 months. Passenger satisfaction scores had reached historic highs among airlines that had adopted the Phoenix Protocol. Discrimination complaints had dropped by 78%. Employee satisfaction in participating airlines had increased as staff felt more confident in their ability to serve all passengers equitably. "But our work is not finished," Maya said. "Changing policies is easier than changing hearts. Building systems is simpler than building understanding. We must remain vigilant because prejudice is patient. It waits for moments of inattention for times when we think the problem is solved." She clicked to a new slide showing global expansion plans for the Phoenix Protocol. Airlines in Asia, Africa, and South America were implementing similar programs, adapting the core principles to their cultural contexts, while maintaining the fundamental commitment to passenger dignity. "Today, I announce the launch of the Global Aviation Dignity Initiative," Maya said. "This partnership between Phoenix Aerospace, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and participating airlines worldwide will ensure that what happened to me on Flight EA-2847 becomes impossible, not just improbable." The initiative represented a $500 million commitment from Phoenix Aerospace funding training programs, monitoring systems, and passenger advocacy resources across 6 continents. It was the largest corporate investment in civil rights compliance in aviation history. As Maya concluded her speech, she returned to the personal story that had started it all. 6 months ago, Marcus Thompson told me I didn't belong in first class. Charlotte Whitmore called me a vagrant and accused me of terrorism. They saw a black woman in a hoodie and decided my humanity was negotiable. The room was silent, hanging on every word. They were wrong. Not just about me, but about the fundamental principles that should govern how we treat each other. In aviation, we talk about safety as our highest priority. But safety includes emotional safety. It includes the safety to travel without fear of humiliation. It includes the safety to exist in shared spaces without having your right to be there questioned. Maya paused, looking out at an audience that included some of the most powerful people in global aviation. The aircraft industry builds machines that connect the world. But connection requires more than aluminum and fuel. It requires recognition of our shared humanity. It requires the understanding that every passenger, regardless of their appearance, their accent, or their wardrobe, deserves to be treated with the same dignity we would want for ourselves. She picked up the original boarding pass from Flight EA-2847, now framed and mounted as a reminder of how far they had come. This boarding pass has become a symbol, Not of my humiliation, but of our industry's transformation. Not of what was broken, but of what we've built to replace it. The applause was thunderous and sustained, but Maya's mind was already on the next challenge, the next opportunity to ensure that aviation truly served everyone who needed to fly. After the speech, as Maya mingled with conference attendees, she was approached by a young black woman in an airline uniform. The woman's name tag read, Captain Sarah Williams, Pacific Airways. Dr. Rodriguez. Captain Williams said, I wanted to thank you. I'm the first black female captain at Pacific Airways, and honestly, I'm not sure I would have had the courage to pursue this career path if I hadn't seen how you handled what happened on Flight EA-2847. Maya smiled, seeing in the young captain's face the future she had been working to create. Captain Williams, the courage was always yours. I just helped clear some of the obstacles from your flight path. As the evening concluded, Maya looked around at the gathering of aviation professionals representing airlines from every continent and every level of the industry. The conversation had fundamentally shifted from whether discrimination was a problem to how quickly they could implement solutions. Change hadn't just come to aviation. It had arrived with the force of justice long delayed, and it was here to stay. 1 year after Flight EA-2847. Maya Rodriguez stood in the same private terminal at Westchester County Airport where her journey had begun. But everything had changed. The marble reception desk where James Morrison had dismissed her now bore a bronze plaque reading Dignity in Service Award, with photos of airport employees who had gone above and beyond to serve passengers with respect and kindness. Isabella Hernandez was behind that desk now, promoted to terminal manager, after her courage in reporting the discrimination Maya had faced. When she saw Maya enter, Isabella's face lit up with genuine warmth. Dr. Rodriguez, Isabella said, coming around the desk to greet her. Welcome back. Your aircraft is ready when you are. Maya smiled, feeling the weight of history in this simple exchange. A year ago, she had been treated as an intruder in this space. Today, she was welcomed as the valued customer she had always been, but more importantly, as a human being deserving of basic respect. Through the windows, she could see the latest Phoenix Skyline model on the tarmac, this one bearing the logo of Dignity Air, the new airline Sophia Martinez was helping to launch. Sophia's vision was simple. Create a carrier where every passenger, regardless of their appearance or background, would be treated with the respect they deserved. The industry has changed because you had the courage to demand change, Isabella said as they walked toward the tarmac. My daughter starts flight attendant training next month. She'll grow up in an aviation industry that's better because of what you did. Maya nodded, thinking about all the letters she had received over the past year. Passengers who had found their voices after seeing her story. Aviation workers who had spoken up when they witnessed discrimination. Young people who had been inspired to pursue careers in an industry that was finally living up to its potential to connect the world. The transformation hadn't been perfect. There were still incidents, still moments when bias overcame training and protocols. But now, there were systems in place to address these failures quickly and decisively. More importantly, there was a cultural shift toward seeing such incidents as problems to be solved rather than normal aspects of travel. As Maya boarded her flight, she was greeted by a flight attendant who had graduated from the Phoenix Training Institute. The young man's name tag read, David, and his service was professional, warm, and completely free of the assumptions about who belonged where that had characterized her experience a year earlier. Welcome aboard, Dr. Rodriguez, David said with genuine enthusiasm. We're honored to have you flying with us today. Maya settled into her seat, pulling out her tablet to review the latest reports from the Global Aviation Dignity Initiative. The data was encouraging. Passenger complaints related to discrimination had dropped by 85% across participating airlines. More importantly, passenger satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs as airlines discovered that treating everyone well was not just morally right, but financially beneficial. She thought about Marcus Thompson, who had disappeared from public view after losing his aviation career. His story had become a cautionary tale told in training programs worldwide, a reminder of how quickly prejudice could destroy a career and a life. Maya felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only sadness that it had taken such consequences to change a system that should never have tolerated discrimination in the first place. Charlotte Whitmore had become a different kind of cautionary tale. Her social media presence, once devoted to displaying her wealth and privilege, now consisted mainly of court-mandated community service posts as part of her settlement agreement. Maya had insisted that Charlotte's service focus on bias education programs, turning her experience into something that might prevent others from making similar mistakes. As the aircraft climbed to cruising altitude, Maya looked out the window at the world below. Millions of people were traveling today, crossing boundaries and connecting cultures in ways that had once been unimaginable. The aviation industry she had helped transform was making those connections more dignified, more inclusive, and more human. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sophia Martinez, who was somewhere over the Pacific on Dignity Air's inaugural flight to Tokyo. Full cabin, perfect service, 0 incidents. You changed everything, Maya. Thank you. Maya typed back. We all changed everything. Keep flying. She put her phone away and closed her eyes, feeling the steady hum of engines that represented not just mechanical progress, but human progress. The aircraft she had designed were carrying people toward their dreams, their families, their futures. And now, finally, those aircraft were also carrying them with dignity. If you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong somewhere because of how you look, how you dress, or where you come from, your story matters. Share it. Speak up when you see others being treated unfairly. Because change doesn't happen in boardrooms or courtrooms alone. It happens when ordinary people find the courage to demand extraordinary respect for their basic humanity. The sky belongs to all of us. Let's make sure everyone gets to fly with dignity. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that standing up for what's right can create ripple effects that change entire industries, then hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about people who refused to accept injustice and used their courage to build something better. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their dignity matters, that their voice has power, and that change is always possible when we stand together. Because every time we speak up against discrimination, every time we demand better treatment for ourselves and others, we're building a world where everyone can travel through life with the respect they deserve. Thanks for watching. And remember, your story could be the one that changes everything.